All right, I can see that people are coming in gradually, and I expect that we will be seeing more as the hour goes on. I want to start by welcoming all of you here. Welcome to another opportunity to be an informed voter. We thank you for being here and the candidates for making it possible. I want to start by recognizing the Peninsula College of Associated Students, particularly Trina. Is she here? Trina, who is the president of the council, and David, who is the vice president. Are you here, David? He's out in the hall. Well, he'll be appearing with anything you might need, like paper or pens or something. So thank you very much for co-sponsoring this with us. It's very important to have the youth involved in these endeavors. We also want to thank Peninsula College. We're also want to thank Peninsula College for the use of the little theater. It's a wonderful venue to do forums like this in. We're very pleased with that, and I had a chance to say that to Mr. Robbins when he dropped by to say hello to us. And it could go without saying, but I will say it anyway, that we owe a lot to the League of Women Voters Voter Services Committee, who does a lot of hard work to put all of these forums on, so thank you very much. I'm Bertha Cooper, and I'm going to be your moderator this evening. I'm a member of the League of Women Voters. In 2 years, the League will celebrate its centennial, nearly 100 years ago. Yes. Nearly 100 years ago, the League formed following the successful campaign to win women the right to vote. The founders of the League deemed that the League would be a nonpartisan organization whose purposes are to encourage local citizens to register to vote, to become informed voters, to vote, and to be involved at all levels of government. Voter turnout in 2017 and the primary 2000 election in Clallam County was less than 50%. The presidential election of 2016 had 80.5% registered voters voting. That's a lot better than less than 50%. But even at that, nearly 10,000 registered voters in Clallam County did not vote. We all have an equal voice, but only if we vote. In that spirit, in the spirit of the League, those of you who are here tonight and are eligible to vote but not registered to vote can do so by picking up a form at the League table. Forms are available to you to take to family and friends not registered to vote. The deadline for online or mail-in registration has passed, but we all have until October 29th to register in person at the county courthouse, the auditor's office. As a nonpartisan organization, the League does not support or oppose candidates, factions, or political parties. The views expressed here tonight are those of the candidates and not of the sponsors of this forum. Our role is to provide the opportunity for you to meet and hear the candidates and make an informed decision based on your criteria and what you want to see from the elected position. The League does, however, act in support of or in opposition to selected governmental issues which its members have studied. You can find more information about the League on the membership table in the lobby or going to our website, which is listed on your agenda. We will be following the agenda you should have in your hands. Is there anyone who does not have an agenda who would like one? Raise your hand. Okay. Great. Before we start, a couple of matters. First, turn off all cell phones and devices that make noise. Note there are restrooms in the lobby outside of the theater. A word about video recording. We are being recorded. No non-league audio or video recording devices of any kind are permitted during this forum unless prior permission has been received. The league is recording this forum and the video will be posted on the league's website. Our forum tonight will be in two parts. The first panel will feature candidates from the Public Utility District, number 1, Commissioner District, number 3. The second panel will be the candidates for United States House of Representatives, District 6, Washington State. Each panel will follow the same basic outline, although the second panel is longer and allows more time for statements and questions. The candidates will make brief opening statements. Next, we'll take questions from the audience, and then the candidates will make their closing statements. We hope you will be thinking of the questions you want to ask the candidates now and as you listen to their opening statements. If you need a card to write on to get your thoughts together, hold up your hand and a league member will provide one or a student will provide one. Does anybody want a card and a pencil? Here's a couple down here. One. Everybody else? Oh, somebody in the back row. Two people in the back row. Thank you. To make the most of your time, I ask you to kindly refrain from applauding or making any noises which in any way would interrupt our speakers. I'll be sure to give you a chance at the end of each panel to give a round of applause to the candidates. Student league members are wearing name tags. They're around the room. If you need any assistance, just signal them. Our timers this evening are Joan Hoda and Walt Johnson. They are sitting in the front row, and their job is very important. It is to make sure we stay within the time limits that have been established for each segment of our forums. Your agenda provides summary information on the responsibilities of each office that is being discussed here tonight. So I am not going to take time to go over that with you. I'm going to move the table. Okay. The candidates for the position of for Public Utility District number 1, Commissioner District number 3, are Ted Simpson and Jim Waddell. Both candidates, in the order they file for office, will be given up to 2 minutes for their opening remarks. We have asked the candidates to introduce themselves by covering the following information. What are your qualifications for serving in this office? Why are you running for this office? And what are your goals for your first year in the office? Candidates, please keep your eye on our timer so you can gauge your time. If you see a stop sign, those folks down there, if they hold up a stop sign, you may finish your sentence, but then stop. We'll begin with Ted Simpson.
Well, good evening. It's indeed a pleasure to be here. Get the right spot on this microphone. I'm a native of Clallam County. Was born here. Went through the Port Angeles school system. Attended the very first class of Peninsula College in 1961. That campus was over at the high school at that time. We didn't have this beautiful facility that's here now. I attended Peninsula for 2 years and then went on down to Olympic Junior College in Bremerton to continue studying forestry. While I was there, I changed my mind, came back to Port Angeles, took out an electrical apprenticeship, went to work with my father, and became an electrician, and I have been one ever since. My interest in the PUD started in 1984 when 5 nuclear power plants were being attempted to be constructed. Only one of those was finished and put in operation, but through that process, our rates doubled from 2 cents to 4 cents. And that stirred the Northwest, not just Washington State, but the whole Northwest up pretty good. And so I ran for the office of PUD Commissioner back in 1984, was elected, and I've been there ever since. I hope to be able to continue to steer the PUD in the direction of new green resources, and that would be my goal for the next 6 years. Thank you.
Jim Waddell?
Thank you. It's a pleasure being here to talk to you folks. I'm a civil engineer, 35-year public service career civil engineer with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Had a lot of different jobs in the Corps, from building stuff on the ground to doing policy work in the White House and Corps of Engineers and so forth. Even worked on climate change issues. One of the great jobs I had in the Corps was in Walla Walla, managing 7 major hydro projects. And my job as a senior civilian in that district of 700 people was to sort of estimate, justify, and try to get funds for operating hydropower projects. So in the course of trying to do that kind of thing, you learn a lot about what hydropower actually costs. And that was my job. It was to figure that out and justify those budgets to Congress. Along the way, though, we were doing some studies about the cost of dams in the system, and we were noticing that some of these dams were very expensive to operate. So when I retired a few years ago, I got back into this just on a chance whim, and actually right here at the Peninsula College, an event, and got to studying hydropower again, particularly in face of Bonneville Power's administration's cost challenges. Bonneville Power is basically facing a physical crisis today, and has been for about 7 or 8 years, since the amount of surplus power they've been selling has been selling at a loss, which is why our rates are going up. And so the other thing I looked at, well, what is our PUD doing about this? And I went to a few meetings to brief the commissioners and so forth, and told them what I thought my findings were about the cost of hydropower, and that it was expensive. And we had some dams that were really good producers of hydropower, and there's other dams that weren't and costing a lot of money. So what I was trying to point out is how we move money around from one dam to another, and tried to bring this up to the attention.
Thank you, candidates. Next, we'll take questions from you, the audience. Please come to the microphone with your question and state your name and specify who your question is for. You will have up to 30 seconds to ask your question. Our timers will hold up the stop sign if you use up that time. A league member will hold the microphone for you. Resist trying to hold the mic. It won't work. You'll lose. The candidates will have up to 1 minute to answer each question, so please consider this time limit when crafting your question. It may help you to stay within your 30-second time limit if you write your question beforehand and then read it when it's your turn at the mic. If you do not wish to come to the mic, give your written question with your name on it to one of our members or the student, and it will be read aloud by a league member or a student for you. The candidates will be given up to 1 minute to answer each question. Both candidates will have the opportunity to respond to all questions, even those directed to a specific candidate. I will then give each candidate the opportunity to respond to or rebut their fellow candidates' answers. They will be given up to 30 seconds for a brief response or rebuttal, or if they wish, they may waive their chance to respond. I expect there to be about 30 minutes for audience questions and candidate responses. If we run out of time before you get your question answered, unfortunately, both our candidates have to leave on time. Did I get that right? They have another forum to go in Nia Bay and don't have a lot of time to get there. So try to get all your questions in during this time, because I know they're here to answer your questions and your concerns. Carol Hull and Marcia McGuire are our mic holders today. And while I see someone has lined up, and the rest of you, as you're coming forward to line up, I'm going to begin this part of the forum with the first question, and this is for both candidates. My question relates to earth warming or climate change and energy resources. In your view, what is a public utility district's responsibility, if any, in managing current energy resources and identifying new energy resources in relation to climate change? We'll start with Ted Simpson.
Yeah. Currently, the Clallam County PUD purchases all its energy through Bonneville. 98% of that energy is green. And when I say that includes hydro, which is about 88% of it. And hydro is not considered green under Initiative I-937. However, nuclear is, and that's 10% of it. Our challenge right now is integrating the remaining green energy, wind, solar, and geothermal into that mix and keeping it low enough. We're not the bad guys, not in the Northwest. We really have one of the most carbon-free energy systems in the world. Where most of our carbon comes from is automobile.
Jim?
I think that's the PUD's role here is to really pursue any form of energy that can reduce rates. And right now, wind and solar are very competitive with hydropower. Not all dams, but some hydropower. And so what I would pursue, not only for the benefits of green energy, but also for the fact that reservoirs emit methane, and methane is 85% more potent than carbon. So actually our dams aren't carbon, they're carbon-free but not methane-free. So pursuing green energy actually saves us money, because right now that power is coming in at $22 to $25 a megawatt hour, and Bonneville and the PUD are charging us basically $36 a megawatt hour. So not only can we get green energy and integrate it pretty quickly, because all you have to do is take off some of the surplus hydro power and let the grid accept more solar and wind, and there's already a lot of it, but that's what will happen.
Ted, you wish to respond? You have 30 seconds.
No. I think we're headed the right direction where we're going right now.
Further comments, Jim?
Well, I think the PUD at a regional, like inside the county here, really ought to be incentivizing solar especially, and using that to create smart grid areas, microgrids and stuff like that, to build some resilience into the community as well. So that's another aspect of green energy, is it actually gives you a resource that can save you money in the short term, but also be around in case we have power outages or other disasters.
All right, we'll start now with questions from the audience. Remember to state your name and to whom you want to direct your question.
My name is Sandy Goodwick, and this would be for both of them.
Okay.
I'm fairly new to the area and did not have any say in utilities where, in Southern California, so I'm curious about why it's even an elected position. And so my question would be, what kind of decisions are routinely expected of anyone in this position, and how would you be uniquely suited or qualified to answer those? What kind of things have been going on this past year?
We'll start with Jim.
Okay, well, obviously one thing is that the PUD commissioners set policy and so forth, but this reminds me of something that's in the 1940 charter language of our PUD, and there's 2 points that are really critical. Our PUD was set up to reduce rates and to compel electricity providers to reduce their rates as well for what we pay. And so what I think another function for the PUD commissioners is to actually work with other PUD commissioners around the state. And actually I've done this as late as last Thursday, working with the Cowlitz County PUD to get up there and demonstrate some leadership in the face of Bonneville Power Administration. Bonneville Power is just handing us bills, and our PUDs, including this one, are just accepting those rate increases without too much of an argument, it appears to me. So that's part of the problem, is to demonstrate leadership.
Ted?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I really didn't understand the question or couldn't hear it. Could you?
The question was, what are the responsibilities of the commissioners, and what kind of things do you work on?
Yes, what decisions like this past couple of years, and how are you uniquely qualified to respond to them?
Okay. Yeah, PUD commissioner is the conduit between the public and the PUD. And it's your job to listen. People like you or anybody else that wants to talk to you or will talk to you about what they perceive to be a problem. And then bring that back to the PUD management and see if you can't rectify that. I've done that for the last 35 years, 34 years, excuse me, and I think have done it very well. We do take care of the needs of the community, in my opinion anyways. And I think that's the biggest part of the job for a PUD commissioner.
Your time is up, thank you. Did you want to respond?
Sure. You asked a little bit about qualifications. One of the things I've done is, since I retired about 10 years ago, is spend about 10,000 hours of my own time boring into this issue about what BPA is doing to us. And like I mentioned, leadership is important here, and getting in the face of these federal agencies is what we really need to be doing, and that's what I've spent a lot of my time over the last 5 or 6 years doing on my own. So that's one of the qualifications I bring to this, is just simply taking leadership positions with federal agencies that don't like to be listened to.
Ted, do you wish to respond?
No, not really.
Okay. Question here?
So Ed Bowen, and my questions to both of you, basically a vision question. I'm looking for your vision. With the premise that broadband is or will be a utility, what is your vision on how it could be rolled out in the rural areas of this peninsula, similar to the idea that we had several generations ago called rural electrification?
We'll start with Ted.
Yeah, and we, the PUDs, all over the state of Washington have been negotiating, if you will, with the legislature to have authority to do that. Currently, we don't have that authority. We here at Clallam County do power, water, and sewer. And so that's something, we also belong to an outfit called NOAANET, who brings fiber and internet into the community for us. We also use fiber to connect our substations for our SCADA system, and we overbuilt that and make it available to local ISPs.
Ted?
My vision is, as I see it in the future, what I really see is an empowered citizenry in the rural areas that are able to access the best technology and internet technology and information in order to give them, increase their ability to earn money and be connected and stay educated. And I think this is a, kind of a foundation thing for our well-being in terms of economic development and sustainable development in terms of the economy, is to have people that are in this time and age, you have to be connected. And when you are, you can actually be quite effective in terms of creating wealth in parts of the rural areas that right now do not have much wealth because of their disconnectedness.
Ted, you wish to respond or rebut?
Well, just one additional thing. The general public have been putting pressure on not just Clallam County PUD, but all utilities to bury our lines, get them out of sight. And we've done that. And about 60% of our distribution system is underground. We don't have any poles or any place to string fiber. It becomes much more difficult to re-ditch or dig ditches and distribute that stuff.
Ted? I'm sorry. Jim?
I'm okay.
Oh, you're done. Okay. All right. Question here.
My name's Lisa Bolware. I'm unfamiliar with the role of the PUD, and can you each talk about your top priorities for Clallam County if you are elected?
Is it to both candidates? Thank you. Okay, then we will start with Jim.
Okay, I think my top priority would be this. Since what we pay Bonneville for our power is basically 60% of your power bill. So those rates are going up because of Bonneville's financial crisis. And they got a lot of debt to pay back, and if they tried to seriously pay it back, we'd hit double-digit rates. So it's going to take some serious cost cutting within the Bonneville Power Administration to keep our rates from going up. And we should be being able to get them down because of what I mentioned before, is that a lot of green energy is now priced lower than Bonneville. So that would be my top priority. And I realize there's things to do within the county, upgrading lines and so forth like this. But if we can't control that 60% of the cost, then we're not going to have the kind of money it's going to take to maintain the systems within the county and upgrade them and everything else we need to do in terms of paying people and employees in the county that work for the PUD.
Ted?
Yeah, I'm going to kind of deviate from that answer. Clallam County PUD, along with all other PUDs, are what we call public power. And when we say public power, it means that it's you. They operate not for profit. And so all our costs are pooled, and from that pool, we generate a rate. For those people who can't pay their bill, you pick up that slack.
Jim, you wish to respond?
Well, I just want to say one other thing is about Bonneville Power. It's important to recognize that Bonneville Power is a marketing agency for hydropower. That's one of their two functions. The other one is maintaining the grid. As a marketing agency, they do everything they possibly can to push hydropower, no matter what it costs, at us. And so that's why I think that getting ahead of them and getting into them and trying to control those rates, and that's part of our charter, is to compel those electric companies to reduce their rates.
Ted?
Yeah, they also follow our load. So when if you turn on the light, Bonneville will make sure that the power is there for it. And that's a very, very, very complicated system that Bonneville operates. You know, Jim's been critical of Bonneville. They do a heck of a job. Their costs are astronomical, but that's part of the cost of doing business.
Okay. We have another question here.
My name's Cheyenne. My question's for Jim. I just moved here, so it might just be educating me, but you talked about a vision for wind and solar. Where I moved, there were wind and solar farms. So if we did want to move in the direction, would we be talking about building those farms? Where would the nearest farms be? Like, how would we get some of that wind and solar power?
Okay.
Jim?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's two geographic answers to this. First is locally. Solar should be incentivized much more effectively than it has been right now with the PUD. That builds that resiliency I talked about earlier, and it saves money. The second one, though, is that in the state of Washington, there's a lot of growth potential for more wind. Eastern Washington can support a lot of wind. They have 7,000 megawatts now. And the other cool thing about Eastern Washington, it's a perfect place for solar because it's perfectly matched with the kind of temperatures in the summertime and peak demands. And when that solar, and there's now 5,000 megawatts of solar waiting to be put on Bonneville's grid, and there just simply isn't enough room because of the hydropower, which is actually costing more. So you have that answer out in the state, which will reduce our rates and carbon footprint, methane footprint, as well as what we do here locally is to get more solar in our communities here.
Ted?
Yeah, oddly enough, Clown County PUD has over 300 solar generators on its system right now. There's only one other PUD in the state that has more, and it's not much. We really have had a good response. We attempted to build a solar farm in the swim area, and it failed.
Jim, you wish to respond?
Yeah, just a quick one there about the, solar in this county here. I'm a solar owner, and I can tell you that it was really tough, breaking through all the rules and stuff to get it here. And I know a lot of other people that have been trying to install solar have run into similar frustrations with the PUD. And in the utility scale that Ted just talked about, I think that's a case where the PUD just was not exercising enough leadership and initiative to help really gain momentum on that and go and make that work.
Ted, you wish to rebut?
No, we're just trying to accommodate wherever we can. People would like to do that. Again, this is a system, and you don't want individual putting power into your system when you don't need it. Jim talks about some restraints. Those are cautions to make it safe for the system for us to work on.
Our next question will be over here with...
My name is John Conrath, and I have a question about transparency for Ted, or really lack of transparency, with the way I see PUD interacting with our ratepayers. I've gone to your meetings, and it seems like there's an appalling lack of discussion. People get up and they say their piece, and there's no discussion on the part of the commissioners. I've gone to meetings that weren't taking place, and there was never any notice that it wasn't taking place. That's a type of non-transparency.
Okay.
And then,
your question, you're out of time.
I'm out of time.
So it's mainly about
Okay,
transparency.
Well, also, for example, net metering was never put onto the agenda, which is a major issue.
All right. Ted, the question was directed toward you.
Well, I guess I'm a little bit confused of all of the county agencies, I think the PUD is one of the most transparent. We certainly don't discuss things outside of our meeting amongst the commission. We have to operate under state guidelines, state and federal guidelines, and sometimes those influence our decisions or our direction. But I would say that we're very transparent.
Jim?
Well, I experienced your sort of interaction with the commissioners myself in terms of them not listening to me pointing out the significant problems with Bonneville's cost. And that's why I'm running, was because I said, no, okay, that's enough, I'm going to run. One other thing about transparency, though, it's interesting when you go to the website for the PUD, they have failed to post their financial statement for the last 3 years. That is a real bust in transparency, and we can't even see the financial statements, which should be posted within a month or two of each fiscal year, and there's nothing there for the last 3 years.
Ted?
All I can say is that the commission is not responsible for posting any information on the utilities website. That's a staff function, and if we're not doing something that's required by law, you certainly have an opportunity to come to a meeting and let us know that and see that it gets changed.
Jim?
We shouldn't have to rely on staff. If something's wrong, commissioner ought to jump right in and take care of it. That's, to me, just lack of leadership.
Okay, all right. Lisa, oh, did you have a question? Yes. All right, we'll go with you until Lisa's already had a turn.
My name is David Harvey. Sorry to cut you off there. My question is for both candidates. Are you in favor of moving the PUD in a direction that would eliminate our need to purchase hydropower? As Jim mentioned, dams make reservoirs, and reservoirs contribute to methane production and global warming. However, they also have severe negative impacts on our local watersheds. What will you do to protect our watersheds and keep electricity affordable?
This is for both candidates. Then we'll start with Jim.
Okay, in terms of the hydropower, we're going to need a lot of hydropower still for a long time. And yeah, a lot of that hydropower has really negative effects on salmon and so forth. But we do know that there are some hydro projects that are wasting money and killing salmon, and those that have been well documented. I'm personally familiar with those and know what the problems are, and so those should be decommissioned immediately. And that's one way to get not only our rates down, but to protect the environment in a very profound way, because as I speak, we are about to lose the salmon runs of the Pacific Northwest and the orcas that go along and depend on those Chinook.
Ted?
Yeah, I differ in that if we are going to be successful in changing our mode of transportation from hydrocarbons, gasoline and diesel, to electricity, we're going to need all the generation that we have right now and then some. And I don't think this is the time to be taking dams out and then have to replace them in order to operate our electric vehicles.
Jim?
The Northwest Power and Planning Council has published this a 7-year plan, and for many years they've been saying we're going to have basically increases in demand. They have now found and finally admitted that through conservation and other incorporation of green energy, are now saying that will be no demand increases in the Pacific Northwest for the next 15 years. And so we're in a great position to integrate these renewables right now without any impact, and will be good for a decade or two to come.
Ted, you wish to respond or rebut?
When no increase, that's a whole lot of conversation or conservation. And we have done very, very well with our conservation efforts. That's what brought us out of the whoops debacle that we had, was conservation. But again, if we are going to change from hydrocarbons to electricity to operate our motor vehicle fleets, we're going to need all the generation we have right now, and then some.
Okay. Lisa, it looks like you can go next.
I got an answer to my question about your priorities for Clallam County if you're elected from Jim, but I didn't hear that from Ted. So I'd like to know from Ted what your priorities for Clallam County will be if you're elected to the PUD, re-elected.
All right, Ted, it's your question.
Okay, our infrastructure, say, if we're going to change from gasoline and diesel to electricity to run our fleets, we're going to need to increase the size of our distribution system. If we're going to use solar energy to boost or bolster our system, we're going to need to modify it to accept that.
Jim?
You know, the calculus on this, the mathematics about how much you really need to increase the system to bring in electrical vehicles, I think is what Ted's talking about. I haven't seen the numbers on it. I don't think this is significant infrastructure increases to introduce electric vehicles. And the Power Planning Council has already cranked that into their equations about how much future demand is going to be needed. They've cranked in electrical vehicles, so we know from a statewide standpoint that's not really an issue.
Ted, you wish to respond, add to?
Yeah, I don't think anybody knows what the impact's going to be exactly and when. How fast this is going to happen. It's not going to happen overnight, only that, but it is going to happen. It's all just a bunch of guesswork. Nobody's got any hard fact numbers to know what we, the public, are going to do as far as accepting that type of a change.
Jim?
Well, I think it still serves us well to go ahead and, like you said, it may take a while. And so let's get started on it. We can gradually increase. And that's one thing about introducing technology like this at a phased kind of, let's get rolling now instead of waiting until some edict comes along and all of a sudden you've got, thousands of electric cars to deal with. We've got the chance now to do this smart and get moving. And so we ought to do it, and we ought to just take the initiative.
We will take one more question.
Mike Tetro, just want to hear your thoughts on the carbon fee initiative. It's coming up, 1631, I believe, for both candidates.
On 1631, is that we, okay.
Yes.
Thoughts on 1631, and we will start with Jim.
There's a lot of carbon initiatives going around. They all have different, aspects to them and so forth. And I think that on the surface of it, we certainly need to support any kind of effort. None of them are perfect. And so we just need to go ahead and let's just get started on some of these things and work the bugs out as they go along. On the other hand, though, I think a PUD can go way beyond what's being handed to us in these kind of fee initiatives and so forth like that, and get after this situation of reducing rates and integrating green technologies and solar and wind and stuff like that on our own. There's no law holding us back on this stuff, but we're waiting on the government to kind of tell us what to do or not to do. I think that's being a little bit reactive. I think this is where you can really demonstrate, some leadership and get out there and make a difference with these technologies as opposed to being on the receiving end of whatever comes down at some point in time.
Ted?
Yeah, the Clallam County PUD Commission signed a resolution a couple weeks ago that opposes that initiative. It's not that we're opposed to trying to decrease carbon. We support that in every way. It's how they wanted to use the funds, how they evaded how they want to use the funds. That gets put into a commission of 15 people that the governor appoints, and they kind of decide how to spend that money. We don't support that.
Jim?
Well, let's put things in perspective. This bill, if it's passed, will have a fee to oil producers and so forth like that. That fee could get passed on. The PUD is estimated something like $20,000 or $30,000 expense to the PUD for additional fuel charges in 2 years. Let's put that in perspective. Our PUD has about a $17 or $18 million reserve right now, so I don't think it's going to kill us to spend $20,000, $30,000 on that with possibly some additional fuel surcharges if they're passed down in the first place.
Ted?
Yeah, it's not so much the fuel charges, it's all the other unknown mandates that were in that legislation. We need to form a plan and renew that plan every 2 years and present that to this commission, a 15-member commission, have it approved. We would need to hire people, additional people, just prepare and administer that plan. We didn't see the value of that.
Thank you, candidates. You have given us a lot to consider. On behalf of the League of Women Voters of Clallam County and the Peninsula College Associated Student Council, thanks for coming here and doing that with us. Let's give a round of applause to our candidates. We will have a break and reconvene at 5 p.m. During the break, you may want to pick up the summaries of the 4 initiatives on the ballot provided by the League of Women Voters of Washington. Copies are available in the lobby on the table. Sorry? Did I miss closing? That was closing statement. Was it? Oh, goodness sakes. Oh, I'm sorry. I made a terrible mistake.
Almost got out the door.
Thank you, Lisa, thank you, Marcia, for doing that. Rusty at this. All right, well, let's do it.
Okay.
You up for it?
Sure.
Okay, all right. All right, we will provide closing statements in the order, reverse order of the opening statements, and start with Jim Waddell. You have 2 minutes.
Okay.
And you get them all.
All right, I'll try to use them up. Okay, so, I've been a public servant all my life, and I guess I still am. I'm spending a lot of my free time trying to figure out how to resolve some pretty complex government issues in terms of hydropower, renewables, the environment, stuff like that. And that's what, when people ask me about this position, and I realized that I did have a lot of qualifications to pursue it, and given my passion of serving the public and also have a great passion as a physical conservative, and I did this in government, was to constantly seek ways to reduce the cost of services, how our money was being spent in government, and manage to save many millions of dollars in terms of cost savings and time initiatives. So that's what I want to bring to the PUD. I honestly believe that we can reduce rates instead of just simply accepting the rate increases we're getting from Bonneville Power, but you can't do that by yourself. You've got to work with other PUDs, you've got to exhibit some leadership, and that's what I was doing last week with the PUD Cowlitz. The Cowlitz PUD manager was talking about how we organize ourselves to reduce rates, and I'm doing that now. And so I'm just going to carry on if elected and kind of keep pursuing that and keep building on the work that we've already done.
Ted, your closing statement.
I'm going to stay a little bit closer to home. We do work with the Washington State PUD Association collectively to try and pass legislation and influence decisions at the congressional level. But there's a lot of things to do here at home. Like I've said earlier, I think we need to look at our infrastructure real carefully. We need to pay attention to how we put the load on it. It's changing, and we're changing how the system itself is being used. And just try and keep in mind that it is a system, and if you poke a hole in it someplace, it affects a lot of people downstream from where that was. And that needs to be shored up. A lot of our system is aging. It's over 50, 60 years old. We've got poles that we inspect all the time to try and keep them from falling over. We've replaced a lot with fiberglass. And I'd just like to continue to take care of our local system.